to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, welcome everybody to the Trustees' regular meeting of August 15th, 2022, 1 p.m. I'm Trustee President Scott Horowitz. I will ask the Secretary Treasurer Bill Pell to call the roll.
Scott Horowitz, President.
Present?
William Pell, President. Edward J. Warner, Jr.
Here.
Ann Walker.
Here.
And William Parrish.
Present.
We are all here. You may continue.
In Zoom, thank you very much. The next trustee meeting work session will be at 9:30 on September 12th, 2022, followed by our regular session at 1 o'clock on the same day. We do have some minutes that have to be accepted. The regular meeting of August 1st, 2022 at 1 p.m. Is there a motion to accept those minutes?
Motion.
Motion by Trustee Warner, all in favor?
Aye.
We did receive communications from the Suffolk County Department of Public Works, specifically regarding the request to move Far Pond Inlet. Each one of you, I received a copy of that. I mean, I think we could dispense with the reading of that, and we'll, at a later date, make a determination on working with collaborative meeting with the community to try and answer whatever questions need to be answered. So are we all in favor? I'd like a motion to dispense with that.
Motion.
Make a second.
Seconded Trustee Pell, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay. We do have public hearings on. Is there any discussions from the board ahead of these public hearings? I'd like to get started on the public hearings.
Not presently,
Okay.
no.
So the first public hearing that's on the agenda is for 7 Bayberry Cove Lane in Shinnecock Hills. This has been ongoing public hearing for quite some time. I think April 4th was, I believe, the first time that we opened up this public hearing. So I'd like to make a motion to open the public hearing
Second.
today. Seconded by Trustee Pell. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, so that it's open. So now we have everybody here today to move this to the next step here. On the applicant to address the board first.
Good afternoon, President Horowitz, members of the board. My name is Brant Reiner from Nelson Pope and Voorhees, 70 Maxis Road, Melville, New York, here on behalf of the applicant. As President Horowitz has stated, this is our 4th meeting with the trustees publicly about this project. Our first was in April of 2022. I'm here today with Chris Voorhees, the civil engineer for the project, Tim McCulley, the attorney for my clients, and my clients Mark Winthrop and Irene Regan are in the audience representing this application. As you know, this is a continuation of a public hearing associated with the proposed replacement of a legally existing bulkhead and the installation of coral logs with native vegetation for the stabilization of a shoreline along Middle Pond and Honey Pot Pond. In June, we presented a PowerPoint presentation to the board with an extensive history of the project, the site, Honey Pot Pond, Middle Pond, and all of its coastal systems. I can provide the following updates since our June meeting. First, our office has responded to DEC comments pertaining to their review of the project. And secondly, my clients have been in communications with the neighbors, we presume, most, if not all, of the neighbors that were speaking regarding this application over the last 3 public hearings. Let me start with the communications between the neighbors and my clients. Here's a synopsis. My clients, who collectively own properties located at 6, 7, and 9 Bayberry Cove Lane and represent this application for the replacement of a legally existing bulkhead and other shoreline stabilization activities, have communicated with the neighbors along Honey Pot Pond that have expressed concern with this application. Specifically, my clients, as waterfront property owners, recognize the importance of Honey Pot Pond preservation and conservation efforts and are committed to a partnership with the neighbors as collective stewards of the pond. Now that they have contact information for the involved neighbors of Honey Pot Pond, they have developed and intend to maintain an open line of communication with the neighbors to stay ahead of neighborhood issues. My clients also agreed to look at the neighborhood Honey Pot Pond taxation plan with the neighbors and the town, something that they contend they do not recall ever having been approached with before. My clients also understand the neighbors' concerns regarding the distribution of future costs associated with potential maintenance to the pond amongst the 16 landowners that surround the pond. While my clients believe that their expansive non-fertilization, non-disturbance vegetated buffers along the pond offer substantial benefits to the water quality of the pond and the wetland fringe, they are willing to commit to 1/3 of any future cost associated with future projects deemed necessary by the trustees, who we all know own the underwater land. My clients have offered an agreement amongst the neighbors surrounding Honey Pot Pond for the betterment of the pond. The draft language of that agreement has been submitted to the trustees, and I'll just read it into the record again. We as collective, and again, this is a draft, just something that they tried to float by the neighbors to get everybody into the same understanding so they can move forward with this process. So it goes, we as collective owners of private property adjoining Honey Pot Pond, the HPP homeowners, agree to participate to the extent practicable as determined by the collective Honey Pot Pond homeowners with the board of the trustees of the freeholders and commonalty of the town of Southampton, the trustees, who own the underwater land of Honey Pot Pond, in future studies and/or activities, i.e. dredging, seeding, biological assessment, inventorying, etc., that are deemed necessary by the trustees and/or their contracted advisors for the betterment of Honey Pot Pond. The Honey Pot Pond homeowners understand that costs not covered by the trustees or other agencies, organizations, for future activities previously noted in this agreement should be shared 1/3 by the homes situated on the island, which includes 6, 7, and 9 Bayberry Cove Lane, and 2/3 by the homes which have property directly on the pond, which include 4 Bayberry Cove Lane, 42, 44, 48, 50, 54, 56, 66, and 68 Far Pond Road. We further agree that it will be the responsibility of the 6, 7, and 9 Bayberry Cove Lane property owners to protect Honey Pot Pond, Middle Pond, and associated tidal wetland areas adjacent to the bridge and adjacent bulkheaded shorelines, the project site, using best management practices, i.e. erosion control, carefully planned sequential installation, construction oversight, monitoring, vegetative restoration, etc., for the duration of the proposed construction activities as depicted on the plans prepared by Nelson and Pope, which include the replacement of existing timber bulkhead and installation of soft shoreline stabilization, i.e. core logs and native vegetation. That's the draft language that my clients prepared, and they intend to fully execute that with the neighbors if the neighbors are so agreeable. So the discussions with the neighbors are ongoing. There really hasn't been any resolution to that, but our clients are committed to finding that resolution with the neighbors. On June 15th, we submitted revised plans to the DEC to address DEC comments pertaining to the review of the project. They specifically asked us to provide additional information regarding the vegetated wetlands, location of stockpile areas for materials during construction, clarification of plans regarding proposed limit of disturbance and best management practices, clarification of plans regarding construction methodology, clarification regarding quantity of core logs for the soft shoreline stabilization, and implementation of fencing and/or netting to deter geese and deer impacts on the proposed revegetation areas. On August 9th, I submitted those plans to the trustees via email, along with an outline of the neighbors, the dialogue between my clients and the neighbors, as well as that draft agreement. We have not yet received feedback from the DEC. However, we have received approvals from the Army Corps of Engineers and the Department of State for this project has been submitted. Since our last presentation, I have also learned a little bit more about the eroded banks on the east side of the bridge. Mr. Sadio, who resides at 6 Bayberry Cove Lane, informed me that what he considers the gap between the shore and the end of the bulkhead exists because the DEC would only allow the exact replacement with no extension or return of the bulkhead into the land when they replaced that bulkhead a few years ago. So the bulkhead on the east side of the bridge was replaced with proper permits by all agencies. And at that time, it was determined by the DEC that they did not want to allow the extension of the bulkhead any further to what we presume would have been mitigate the erosion issue that's currently ongoing. There was, Marty Shea specified that burlap sandbags should be placed at the gap and planted with seagrass, which was done at the time. The dredging then was approved by the trustees and executed, and while the workers were executing the dredging, they used the sandbags to climb up the bank that was there at the end of the bulkheads to help stabilize the area, and those sandbags were deteriorated. And now we are left with dealing with that situation. So the project in its entirety is intended to correct past activities that impacted the unprotected shoreline and ensure longevity of the currently protected shoreline. So we have, what we're asking the trustees to approve is the replacement of the existing bulkhead on the west side of the bridge, north and south side of the driveway. That's legally existing bulkhead that we're looking to replace as a preemptive activity. Before that bulkhead is allowed to fail, give us the approval to replace that bulkhead so we don't have to deal with any more erosion issues. And secondarily is to correct the eroded shoreline. You know, the longer this shoreline is allowed to erode, the more material that would be displaced into the system. And we're asking the trustees to work with us on what we consider the best solution as a soft solution. You know, the alternative is to put rocks or bulkheads or something like that in there. We just think a soft solution will work. So we hope we recognize our efforts, and we would ask the board to close the hearing today and prepare for a formal decision at the next meeting. Thank you. We're also here to answer any questions that you may have to. Thank you.
Thank you, Brant. I do note that the council is here today to speak, I guess, in behalf of a group of homeowners that's concerned about the project. And sir, I would like to allow you the opportunity, since you've had the liberty of, hearing from Mr. Reiner, and you understand, what the board is up against with this permit application. Perhaps you can share with us concerns and.
Sure, and I appreciate that very much. Thank you also for accommodating the last time this was on. There was a unique, ironic confluence of circumstances, but I appreciate your flexibility there. As also, the last time I was here on behalf of mostly these same folks, we were talking about the inlet on the other side, and I was pleased to hear at the opening of this meeting that you have some progress on that. Sounds like
Well,
you.
just more work, I think, for everybody.
Okay.
We'll talk about that at a later date.
All right. So I'm here on behalf, I'll just give you the addresses of residents at 30, 34, 38, 42, 44, 48, 50, 54, 56, and 66 Far Pond Road, and 2 and 4 Bayberry Cove Lane.
Can you state your name, please?
Yeah,
for the
name,
record?
Timothy Hill, Messina, Perillo, and Hill, 285 West Main Street, Sayville, New York, on behalf of those aforesaid residents. So thank you again for this opportunity. We really want to address, it's understandable to say what could possibly be objectionable about an application that's attempting to remedy a problem. The problem has been ongoing for a long time, and the net effect of the failures of this area that haven't been addressed need to be addressed, and it's not just a matter of saying, let's look forward. The context here is important, and the history is important because it affects what the current conditions are. And a simple replacement of the bulkhead is not going to address the accumulated net effect of what has occurred previously. And the reason, to address this directly with you, this board, is because we're asking specifically for you to enforce and address the applicability of a section of the trustee blue book, specifically section 49E, which states that any person erecting a bulkhead or causing a bulkhead to be erected shall be at all times liable for any damage or injury sustained by reason of the erection or maintenance of said bulkhead. So there was an application in 2007, an emergency application to replace these bulkheads, which explicitly on its face acknowledged that the bulkheads were failing and that materials were leaking into the pond. Subsequently, the same folks that I'm here on behalf of had to, of their own initiative, in 2011, work out a plan to perform some maintenance dredging to address the problem. This is not a problem of their making. The bridge is privately owned and is for the benefit of a few folks on the island side of this property. And there's been no accountability for what has transpired in terms of the effect on the environment. This is effectively what in other contexts we call a strict liability code. It's if you have this and there's damage, you're responsible. What's not explicit in the code is exactly what that means in terms of a remedy. But this is the appropriate moment for us to raise our hand and say, wait a minute, they're here again asking for the same relief. The past problems have not been remediated, and it's the right time to say, here's what you need to do. Now, I'm not saying that I, standing here today, know that 100% of the conditions in the pond are directly related to the failures of the bulkheads, but this code provision begs the question of that assessment being made. And there was discussion of a proposal that was extended to us, which has all the hallmarks of an unenforceable and totally hypothetical arrangement. What it doesn't do is call for a specific time that an assessment would be made, that X has caused Y and requires Z remedy. And this is the time for that to happen. And whether that's at the applicant's expense or it's something that the trustees invest in, that's what needs to happen now, is to figure out why the conditions in the pond as they presently exist, to what extent that's attributable to the at least 15-year history of the failing bulkheads here. And if there's any other substantial contributing cause to the shoaling and other problems with the pond, it's undoubtedly the bridge aperture itself and the narrowness of that. And again, that is something that's to the exclusive benefit of the applicant and the two other homes on this island. So a proposal that says, in the future, if it's deemed necessary, we'll share in 1/3 of the costs of work that's not paid for by the trustees is not a workable solution. What we need is a present-day assessment of the attributability of the bulkheads to the conditions that are existing and a plan to address those. And that's the only thing that really makes sense at this point to do. If the idea that this is a purely on the current application, that the replacement of the bulkheads is purely preventative, the conditions of the existing bulkheads today is not healthy. There's wide openings. So this is not we're in good shape and we're just going to replace them in kind. They're currently failing, and that code provision has to mean something, right? It's there. The folks I represent, are actively engaged in the conditions that exist in their community. This is not to benefit any one particular homeowner. There's long-standing concern for the health and quality of this pond, which is not the pond that it was in the past. And again, not professing that I know exactly what the 100% cause of the changes are. But there's an admission on its face by the applications in 2007 and the application that's being made today that invokes that very code provision. There's a bulkhead, and it's causing injury, and they are, by definition under the code, liable for that injury. The question to you is, what does that mean? What are you able to do to enforce that provision, to hold them liable in the way that the code says they are? So we'd ask you to have a process for assessing the relative degree of responsibility that exists under that code provision. I don't think there's a question of determining whether it applies at all, because the applicants themselves have acknowledged that these bulkheads have caused injury. So it's a fairly straightforward request to this board. It's really in the sweet spot of what you do as trustees, is to watch out for conditions like that are existing and deteriorating at Honey Pot Pond. I thank you for your time. If you have any questions of us, we'd be happy to answer them.
Okay, I appreciate that there, Mr. Hill. That was quite a bit. Okay, so we've heard from the applicant, and we've heard from counsel. Well, no, do you want to? It's not for these guys. I think when we get there, we'll go 3 minutes, but for this, I think we need to hear it out. Okay. Yeah.
If you want me to do this, just let me know.
Sorry?
I just don't know where to even start.
Want me to weigh in on that, let me know.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a lot.
Well, I'll let them say what they all have to say, and then you can weigh.
Okay, so Brant Reiner again from Nelson Pope and Voorhees. I just want to correct a few things, or clarify a few things. Not correct, let's clarify a few things. The bulkhead that we're asking to replace is fully functional. Where there are large gaping holes, I have photographic evidence, if James wants to pull it up, there's no gaping holes, no sign of seepage. It's timber, it's old. It will fail at some point, yes, that's what they do. So we're here today before you to replace that bulkhead in place with new vinyl material that will last hopefully longer. The area of erosion, actually, as James has it up there on the screen, is at the end of the bulkhead that was previously replaced in between 2007 and 2009. And the state of that bulkhead prior to 2007, I'm unfamiliar with. The state of it today, it's fully functional. However, the landward end of that bulkhead is the problem area. That's the problem I just mentioned, where the remedy at the time was to put sandbags in place that were trampled upon and deteriorated when the dredging occurred in 2011. That, without the sandbags being there or any kind of protection, it's exacerbating erosion along the entirety of the shoreline, if not remedied. Our remedy to you is a more sustainable soft shore solution with core logs to capture any sediment from running off into the pond. And if you want to talk about that area, it's relatively insignificant when you think about the 550 cubic yards of material that were dredged out of Honey Pot Pond over a 14-foot wide stretch, 350 feet long. That's a mere fraction of Honey Pot Pond. That's 550 yards that were pulled out of there. The materials that would have been lost from around the areas that we're talking about on that shoreline right there are minuscule. Rough calculations suggest that it's 50 cubic yards at the absolute most. So whatever happened prior to that bulkhead you're looking at right there being replaced, I'm unfamiliar with. And I think it would be very difficult to try to go back and rewind and figure out what happened. I do think we are looking forward, and I do think that the product that you have before you is sustainable, given the current situation that we have. That being said, I just wanted to correct a few things, and I believe Mark would like to just express some comments.
Can we stay up here together?
Sure.
Can you hold my hand? I just wanted to Oh, Mark Winthrop, I'm one of the owners at 7 Bayberry
You
Cove.
have to sign it too, please.
Okay, sure, thank you, will do.
I know, I have not been down there in about a few months, but I think you probably can testify too, Ed. I never saw any gap and holes in the bulkhead there.
James can show through
Yeah.
pictures.
Yeah, yeah, there are no.
There's no
there-
gap and
yeah.
holes.
And fine.
Maybe those don't have all the bulkhead photos, but there are more in your files, James, if you want to look through while he's talking.
But if we go back to that picture that you were showing, I just want to emphasize what Brant was saying, and I also want to have a bit of a presence here from one of the owners actually speaking to you guys, so you know that we're here and we care. We want the pond to be better, but the problem is, if you look here, you can see that further to the right, there's a ton of foliage and trees and shrubs and everything. That hasn't been touched, and that hasn't been impacted at all by our bulkheads or by the bridge. And if you could look down and can you come over right to the top of the last piling? If you could look down there, there's a little bit of dirt missing in there, but it's not a whole lot. And it's illogical to think that that dirt is what's causing the pond to have filled in. The second thing is, I have to believe that the bridge is actually probably one of the things that's keeping this pond alive, because as we know, the Shinnecock pond, the Shinnecock Bay, outside of the pond has become very, very shallow. And in fact, you can look out at low tide and you can even see some sticks sitting on the bottom there. So the bridge is probably keeping that flow open and is probably keeping the pond healthy, in my opinion. But I'm having so much trouble just connecting these issues, because what we want to do is make it better, and I'm trying to figure out how that really connects to why we need to go backwards and look at what's happened, because what I think is here has really helped to keep this pond in good shape, and I think that was always the goal, and that's our goal going forward. So I just wanted to say a few words myself, and I'm here, and Rini is here from my next door neighbor as well. So if you guys want to ask us questions, we're here.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Mark, as a town attorney, as assistant town attorney, counsel to the trustees, do you want to weigh in on any of Mr. Hill's commentary concerning the Blue Book provisions that he's citing?
Yes, I will. Counsel mentioned the first sentence of subsection E, but did not read the second. I'll read it in its entirety. And again, this is Section 49 of the Trustee Blue Book, officially the rules and regulations for management and products of town waters. Section 49, bulkheading, repair, and replacement. Section E does read, as counsel mentioned, any person erecting a bulkhead or causing a bulkhead to be erected shall at all times be liable for any damage or injury sustained by reason of the erection and maintenance of said bulkhead. That sentence in isolation, begs the question, what kind of damage, what kind of injury, and to whom? But the last sentence, the final sentence, says, all applicants are required to maintain the structural integrity of the bulkhead so as not to cause a threat to the person or property of others. Read in its entirety, I think the only reasonable interpretation is that it was meant to do exactly that for which it was written, which is to protect someone in a kayak from a faulty bulkhead falling on them, or someone who had a boat moored nearby having damage to the boat. It does not make the trustees lifelong stewards of every bulkhead post-storm that is damaged, and certainly not to make them liable for any economic damage. Now, it does say a threat to the person or property of others. I have been here for several public hearings regarding this property. I don't believe, and I could be wrong, that any homeowners have alleged damage to their person. And I don't know if any have alleged damage to their actual property, personal or otherwise. So I think Section E, read reasonably, means that people have to keep their bulkheads maintained so that they don't fall on other people or other people's things.
May I address that?
You might as well, go right ahead.
Just to be clear, when I'm reading this and its attribution of or assignment of liability, that's the word that's in here. It's not at all the trustee liability. It's the person erecting the bulkhead and maintaining it.
Don't you have to show proximate cause to the injury, the damage?
Yes, but this is why this is kind of my point, is that we're not here to prosecute a claim. This is the trustee's provision to enforce on the person that it applies to. So the applicants, both presently and historically, are the persons erecting and causing to be erected a bulkhead. They're the ones under the plain language of this provision that are liable. This is you drafting this as it applies.
Liable for the damage it causes.
Correct. So that's,
What
and
do you have to show that the damage was caused by them?
this is really my point, is that
Well, we're asking you to show us. I mean, you have to show us, I don't know what you're talking about, because you have to show us what caused this, if the bulkhead caused this, it caused that. You're just citing laws, not backing with any facts up. You came up and said there's a hole in the bulkhead. We know there's no hole in the bulkhead, okay? I've been down there 2 months ago, unless it happened 3 days ago, okay? You have to prove what you're talking about, okay? You're saying that they're liable, the neighbor, these people are liable for this. Show us how they're liable.
again,
You can just, you can keep on reciting it. We know it. He knows it by heart. He's as he's reading it, he's mouthing the words, okay? Just like we are. You have to prove what caused the damage.
under no version of the enforcement of town codes is it the burden of a third-party member of the public to come up and prove the responsibility. This is your code. It's our position that it applies here. We don't come and say it has to be done X, Y, or Z way. We're saying that there's an application for the replacement of a bulkhead. The replacement of a bulkhead, which the first time it was made, acknowledged on its face that it was causing problems.
Where do you find that? That it acknowledges on its face that it's causing problems?
So the permit, trustee permit number 9365, sought to address, to install steel sheet bulkheads totaling 134 linear feet landward of existing deteriorating wood bulkheads. It goes on to indicate, and again, this permit includes, appends to it the exact code language that I've been referring to. The application asks to install these landward of existing deteriorating wood bulkheads. Project is an emergency as backfill is being lost through the leaking bulkheads. And it goes on to even talk about the potential for a bridge collapse. So these are, if that was happening then, that was the reason for an emergency application at that point. The conditions in the pond are, and again, we didn't come here to commence a lawsuit. We came here to ask you to look into the problem. The pond, in terms of its depth and water quality and other conditions existing there, including the, effectively turning it into a marsh, and it is causing property damage because these were folks that had a pond, and now as their backyard goes out, it turns totally just into a soggy marsh that's different from how it was prior to the existence of this bridge and prior to the prior and now current applications for bulkhead replacement.
So, Mr. Hill, let me just ask you a question. So, you're not coming here to commence a lawsuit, but you're coming here to ask us to look into a problem. So do you think that, us holding up this application to reconstruct this bulkhead, you think that should be tied to us holding this maintenance, this bulkhead replacement to that, or is it two separate type of issues that are going on here? You're asking us to not act on this bulkhead until we make a determination on this issue that you want us to look into? It's a complex issue. We've got this going on throughout the entire township. We've got waterways and ponds and creeks that are filling in, and channels that need to be dredged that haven't been dredged in a long time, and it goes on and on. The town's a different place than it was 50 years ago. I'm just trying to figure out, how we deal with all of these, because these problems aren't going away. The bulkhead's not, it's going to continue to deteriorate, and it's reasonable for people to want to maintain their property. You do have erosion issues. It's reasonable to want to address those erosion issues. And, it's clear, as long as I've been sitting on this board, Honey Pot Pond has been a concern and an issue as other waterways. And you're right. We do need to look into these problems and a lot of other problems. But are you insisting that we hold up the application until we resolve the issue specific to Honey Pot Pond, or is there some way in which we can, remedy what needs to be done for the applicant, with protections in place so that no further harm can be done, nothing can be done, while there's a collaborative effort among, all parties involved to find some form of resolution to Honey Pot Pond? I mean, what, that's what I'm trying to figure out here,
Sure.
because if you could just address that, that'd be helpful to me.
Yeah, so there's two things I'd say in response to that. One is, on Section 59 of your code, you can impose conditions on any grant of any permit. What we're looking for is some present-day assessment of the relative degree of responsibility for the historic maintenance of these bulkheads and the bridge in terms of the impacts on Honey Pot Pond. So in terms of timing, I don't know the exact answer. I would think a reasonable short pause to take a hard look at what's going on, and to see the degree to which this relates to what exists there now, would be the first step in that process. I don't think you indefinitely need to hold up the granting of this permit. If it is granted at some point, I would think it would need to impose an explicit condition that not only states that this provision would apply going forward, because of course it already does. It's written into the law. But to have an assessment by this board of its applicability to the past conditions.
Okay. Got a lot of stuff to digest here at this level. See, Mr. McCauley would like to address the board. Thank you.
Timothy S. McCulley, Burke and Sullivan, 41 Meeting House Lane, for the applicant. I'll be as brief as possible. Last time I was here, I asked you a question about whether or not we had complied with 340-49 and the subsections under there, A through P, and that includes A. And I agree with your counsel that the last tag sentence in 49E is very important. That's what we're trying to achieve, and not run afoul of other provisions in the rule book, which would require us to address deteriorating bulkheads, where you could come in and remove the bulkhead. In this situation, that's probably not going to happen. But I think, unless I'm wrong, this all started out about the issue of sediment on the bottom of the pond and who caused it, whatever. The sediment in the pond has been there forever. That's why when Rosgen got permission to put up the bridge, they immediately applied to dredge. And you granted that permit to dredge, and it's been going on and off ever since. And there's been complaints by the neighbors, back in the 80s saying, I can't get my boat out. So this is nothing new. And to go back in history and say that something in 2007, remember the bridge got replaced and there was a major dredging done. I think it was in 2011. And it opened up that entire channel. And now it fills in. Well, look at the properties that Mr. Hill is representing, including, I think it's the Baggart property. Look at Marty Shea's findings on that. There was a recent permit application for a pool, and he found that they had gone into the wetlands, they built stuff without permits, all of that had to be remediated. And if you look at this 1962 aerial and the most recent aerial in 2022, you'll see that channel is a lot better now than it was back then. So all I'm saying is, we can't go back in history. This is an application to correct what's necessary to correct now. And all of this stuff about we caused, or my client's bridge caused all of this sediment that's been going on for years and years and years, it's conjecture. That's all it is, and that's not fair to the applicant. I don't think it's our responsibility unless you determine that something we did caused all of the sediment in the pond. But if you look at their properties, they've lost a lot of shoreline. Where'd it go? There was even requests that were granted to repair damage to the properties as a result of Sandy. So, you know, this is an evolving situation, and our bridge can't possibly be the cause of the sediment if you look at your own records. Back in the 80s, 90s, request to dredge. So this has been it's a problem. And that bridge is not the cause of the problem. That's, you know, but I would ask you to look at the aerials from 62 and today.
Okay, thank you, Mr. McCulley.
Hey,
Um,
James,
I'm sorry.
you put 62 up, please.
All right, so are we through with the applicants? Hang on one second, sir. Are we through with the lawyers all speaking now? Because I know there's other people here, so I would like to move on with the public hearing, but I'd like to put time limits on it so that it's reasonable. But when we have the applicants here, I'd like to give them a little bit more time, their counsel more time to get their thoughts across. Are you fine for now, Mr. Hill?
Yeah, I just know.
You can't speak from there, but
We're starting to speak about aerials. We have consulted preliminarily with a coastal expert. I have an initial report that discusses the historic progression based on aerial reviews. So I'm happy to share that with the board.
Can you just read the last paragraph of that report we just got today? At the very end, it's one paragraph you have to
You
read.
can't speak from there.
yeah, you,
Sorry.
This is
let's
getting
try
out
and
of
let's
hand.
try and maintain the decorum of a public hearing. That way we do that. So if you, I just respect that, please. Go ahead, Mr. Hill.
Sure.
Can I ask him to identify what he's reading from and the date and so forth?
Yeah, if you'll just and provide a copy of what you've got there for the record, also, Mr. Hill.
Sure. So this is a brief letter report from Mark Burns of Applied Coastal. It's dated August 12th, 2022. Conclusion, channel shoaling since 2011 has reduced the efficiency of flushing within the pond based on available aerial imagery prior to bridge construction. Shoaling in the northern portion of Honey Pot Pond was not evident. After construction of a relatively narrow entrance between Honey Pot and Middle Ponds that restricted tidal flows at all stages of tide, the extent to which shoaling occurred in northern Honey Pot Pond expanded. Shoaling at the entrance and within the northern reaches of Honey Pot Pond will require periodic maintenance dredging to maintain the existing ecology of the pond habitat. If not for the restrictive boundaries to flow associated with the bridge, the degree to which pond shoaling has occurred would not be expected. So,
Mr. Hill, does that report designate an amount, cubic yardage amount of what this maintenance dredging translates to?
it does not.
Okay, thank you.
Admittedly, this is preliminary.
Okay, thank you. Okay, yeah, you want to give it to Jess, we can stamp it in for the record. Okay,
Could you just summarize what you'd have this board do?
We would ask that the board use its resources to assess whether, the degree to which the bulkheads, as they have existed to this point, have caused damage to the quality and conditions at Honey Pot Pond. And at that point, it's your discretion to determine how to enforce that. What we're saying today is the code deems it that if there's that finding, they are liable. How you enforce that is up to you. But it's not out of context, in the context of an application for the same relief, to at this point in time say, wait a minute, if this hasn't been enforced to date, now is the time to do it.
I have a question for you while you're there, and then I'll let you go. Does the state's permit have the same provisions relative to our provisions? Do you recall, or did you examine?
I did not.
Okay.
But I guess I would say that last sentence, I don't think changes anything about what my position is. The last sentence, all applicants are required to maintain the structural integrity of the bulkhead so as not to cause a threat to person or property of others. It just emphasizes to me that it's an ongoing obligation. So it's an obligation at the time you make the application and perform the construction, and it's a continuing obligation.
Okay.
There is, right, we'd all prefer perfectly natural shorelines, right? And then there's different degrees of how those shorelines get hardened with bulkheads or rocks. And, in some instances, the worst thing you could do would be a perpendicular structure. Each one of those causes some degree of damage to an adjacent property. And boards like yourself are, have the tough job of balancing the interests of different parties. But here, this provision gives you the ability and the obligation, I would say, to hold these parties responsible. Right. To what extent and what degree, again, is your discretion.
I appreciate that. The board also has to deal with the effects of Father Time. Mr. McCulley? It's all right.
With all due respect to Mr. Hill, he's trying to bootstrap himself into something that happened or didn't happen years ago. And that's asking us to prove a negative in this situation. We're going forward. The question is what we're doing going to be some kind of harm or cause some kind of harm where we would be liable? We've already said we will take depth soundings now and depth soundings after the construction and see what the difference is. And if there is a difference, we'll address it if it's caused by us. But everything else going back 14, 15 years, that's all conjecture. So I think you need to move this application forward. And before I finish, let me ask you one question. Has anybody on the board talked to the DEC about this application? Okay, because we're not getting a status report from them. We've tried numerous times. I know they're backed up, but I just wanted to know if they had communicated with anybody. Nope.
James, anything in our office? No.
No.
Okay.
One could only guess.
Okay.
Thank you.
Again, I asked you the last time, I'll ask you again today. I think we're in compliance, and I'd ask you to move the application.
Okay, Mr. McCulley, thank you. Mr. McRedmond, are you good with where you're at right now? Nothing to say?
No.
Right?
Good.
Okay. At this point in time, I would allow the public, anyone else from the public, to come up and speak. Address the board, please. with what your comments or concerns are. I'm going to ask 3 minutes. Okay? Jess?
Yep.
Good afternoon. Darren Baggert, 42 and 44 Far Pond Road. I think it's so ironic that even in the first work session that I looked again this morning at, it is the most important key verbal omission by both the representative from Nelson Pope and even Trustee Ed Warner that stated that the bulkhead is failing and there is silting coming in from around it. And now everyone keeps stating it's not failing, it's not failing. And then even the first public hearing, they're on record stating that the bulkhead is failing and it's preemptive, but they need to fix it. So I don't think anyone's saying it shouldn't be fixed. And I also think, sadly, we had a very lengthy Zoom call with all the neighbors. We should work together. But this is not about money. We're not saying you pay for it, I'll pay for it. The depth soundings we have by Mr. Robert Fox are from 2018. We ask that an independent study be done with new depth soundings now, compare them to 2018, and let's see what is the analysis of the pond right now before they do the work. It's not once they start, once they're after. This is a cumulative effect. The short letter that we will submit from Coastal Erosion from Mark Burns, which we just received over the weekend, he states, and it is going back, and so I'm not trying to bring so much onus, but he states that you can see it in 1969 when the bridge was first constructed in the early 70s, that they changed the width of the bridge opening. It was very wide to only 19 feet. And he says that's substantially changed. Even counsel for the applicant stated, once it's dredged, then the water was flowing. Then why not just have an ongoing maintenance dredge? We can figure out how it's financially paid for, but a tie to this. It seems like the residents continue to have to fight, and it's exhausting for us, and believe me, exhausting for you guys. But I just feel like, why should we not stop and have an independent analysis separate of both parties and figure out what's the best for the pond? If it's not a dredge, great. If it is a dredge, great. It just seems like they're trying to hurry up, even though it's not. This is preventative. It's not a rush, and they just want to make this happen without any true analysis. So I guess I just asked to let us submit the letter from Mr. Mark Burns and have you guys review it. And I asked the trustees again just to, whether it's there's so many incredible experts out there that I think need to have a proper analysis of the pond. And if it's an ongoing small dredge, listen, the Army Corps will normally give a dredge for 10 years, and I think within that 10 years, every 2 to 3 years is a maintenance dredge. Honey Pot Pond does not have that. The one bridge owned by one property owner at 7 Bayberry Cove, it's only used by the other 2 island owners. That seems to be at least what changed the dynamics of a lot, just at a faster rate. It's not 100%. So thank you very much.
Yeah, but I did state that the bridge is starting to fail. I'll admit that. I mean, I've been down there multiple times. There are, I believe, 3 tie rods that hold that whole entire bridge together. And it is slowly but surely easing out and easing out.
Right.
As we speak right now, there's minimal siltation that is happening coming between those boards that are on that bridge.
No, and that's why I like an analysis.
If there was...
We're not back and
If there
forth.
was terrible siltation coming out, the bridge is really falling apart, there were giant holes in it, the driveway would be constantly fixed. I'm down there like on a bi-weekly basis. That driveway is the same as when they fixed it after they did the decking over. So it's been pretty much consistent for, since the application, prior to the application being in. James, can you put up the video that you had before showing the return on the bridge? I'm going to let the next person also come up to what? The slides that you had before showing.
the pictures?
The pictures, yeah. See, what you're looking at here right now, this erosion, it's unintended consequences of previous dredging. When you do a dredging in a channel, there's flow of water back and forth. The surrounding wetlands and meadows just slough into the bay. So we did a dredging back in 2011. This is unintended consequences of that dredging. It's happened many years later, but this is what slowly fills in the channel that the homeowners did pay for in 2011. If you go in another picture that I have, I believe I took and gave it to you. It was the winter picture in March on the outside of the bridge. Next one, that picture there. Now you can see the channel that's been dredged. It goes underneath the bridge and it heads west. Out in the pond, beyond that, that is actually the pond bottom. The tide is so low that where it was dredged, there's a channel there. I believe it's about 700 or 800 feet. So you can dredge that 100 feet deep. It's never going to get in and out because that mud and muck that's naturally occurring in that pond is going to restrict it. So, you know, what we did was an environmental dredging. When the tide gets high enough in the bay, in that pond, it comes in Honeypot Pond, and there's a natural flowing back and forth. I've grown up there since I was a kid, 7 years old, down there bait fishing with my father. That pond is as healthy now or healthier than when he was alive. There were references to the trustees back in the 70s and 80s that this pond has problems, it's dying. It's in better shape now. The wetland fringe around that pond is higher than it has ever been. You know why that is? Because we did an environmental dredging and we get more fresh water in there, cooler ocean water, quicker during the summertime and in the warmer months. Down there, I watched turtles swim out from underneath the bridge. I met with the consultant, Mr. Reiner. We were standing there was turtles swimming out. The bait fish was swimming back and forth. The water was, it was high tide. There was 3 feet of water underneath the bridge. You could look down and see the bottom. That environmental dredging that we did to 3 feet did exactly what we wanted it to do. And to this day, it is still working to the way we had it planned.
That was looking into Middle Pond, right?
Yes.
Oh, I was-
See, now this is the westerly part of the dredging. As you can see, that still has water flowing even at a winter low tide.
I am glad you took the photos for us. I appreciate you coming
You
down.
can't,
Guys, you
if you're gonna
guys.
keep on talking
So,
like that.
I mean, I've done a lot
be
of work.
quiet.
I've done a lot of work on this pond. I spent a lot of time down there. If this pond was dying, it would have macroalgae laying all over it, covering it. The grasses around the perimeter of the pond would not be 5 or 6 feet high, which they are. So, I mean, right now, as you look at it, it's in pretty damn good shape. Okay, so, you done? Yes. Okay, I'm gonna get to the next member of the public that would like to address the board. If you could state your name, sign in.
My name is
Bring
Pete
it.
Hunsinger. We live at 2 Bearberry Cove Lane. And I just wanted to say that we believe, the bridge definitely needs repair, but our position is let's fix the problems it has caused before we move forward. The Nelson Pope report said that the depth at low tide was 4 feet. And this is the issue, it seems like the silt is drying it up. There's no way, it's closer to 4 inches than 4 feet at low tide. And Mr. Reiner, the last time he spoke, he admitted he didn't know what was, that this wasn't going to cause more silting or that they have caused silting over the 15 years. We don't even have property on Honeypot Pond, but we are close to the bridge. And every time a car goes, I was sitting out on our porch this morning, every time a car goes over that bridge, it's like 3 big bangs. And I'm not an engineer, but it has to be acting like a pile driver, the way it pounds down. And there are big trucks going over it. And again, I'm not an engineer, but I know when you impact something, the sand is not going to be falling up the hill. It's going down the hill and filling up. So we'd like to see a plan to get the depth. The life of it is great, to get the depth of the pond back to where it is so it doesn't dry up before we go ahead and fix the bridge that's needed. Thank you.
Okay. Does anybody else want to address the board at this point in time? Okay. That's it?
No.
There's one more person? Or Jill? You're gonna?
Jill Schwartz and 66 Far Pond. I don't, there were too many things said that I wanted to just but I've, trying to take notes. But I'm just tell you, point of fact, over 900 cubic yards of material was pulled out, not 550.
Could have just addressed the board, Jill. We're trying to get.
Sorry, oh, I thought you
information to
wanted
make
this
a
down.
decision, yeah.
Over 900 cubic yards was pulled out. There was an amendment to the permit, and they added more, and actually, they pulled out even more than the 900. I was there every single day. I think that an analysis has to be done of the pond. I think that even including nitrogen and phosphorus levels. I think that it's tough to say, I mean, I'm in that pond almost every day. I kayak and I paddleboard. I don't see what Ed sees. I'm not a marine biologist, so I just know what I see. I know what I used to see, and I know what I see now. I think that if the pond was teeming with fish and other food for birds, we would have a lot more birds. It's a rare sighting now when we have a snowy white egret. I actually had one land on my outdoor table the other day, and I thought that was really cool. But mostly, we don't have the fish feeding. So I don't see any turtles. I'm glad you saw one, if you saw one. I do know how much the channel has filled in from when it was dredged in 2011, but I had showed the pictures to you back in 2011 of why it had to be dredged. And I don't know at what point we need to dredge again and how much we need to dredge, but I do know that the pond has to continue to flush. And the pond was becoming anaerobic after the work was done the last time when they replaced the bulkheading on the east side. I don't know, I do know that one of the first things that the representative from the DEC said to me when this permit application was put in was, in reality, they have to widen the bridge. The aperture, it is too small, it is too narrow, and that is a big cause. And that was identified by our coastal erosion expert, and Timothy Hill addressed that. And so, while that maybe can't be done, we have created this narrow artery. I would also urge you to look back at the aerials from the 1960s, because I know Mr. McCulley referenced that, look at it. You can look at the aerials over time, you can see where shoaling starts. That was a deep pond in the 60s. They keep saying it wasn't. The proof is in the GIS. Just look. So, if there's any question, just look at the pictures. In terms of okay, I'm done. Okay, sorry. Thanks.
Jill, you could submit what you need to submit to the board to read, what you have. Your commentary would be helpful if you submit it to the board.
Oh, right up what I said.
Yes, because
Good afternoon. Thank you for your time and your patience. I'm Jane Hunsinger, and I am at 2 Bayberry Cove Lane. My husband was speaking before. I just wanted to reiterate that I came to 2 Bayberry Cove Lane when I was 7 years old. I'm now 66, so you can do the math. We were able to jump off the bridge into the water and back in those days, okay? It was very deep. And the people have been saying all sorts of things about the pond and what they remember and what they don't remember and the health of it and all. I would ask, as Jill just stated, please look at the aerials from the 60s and see what the differences are. We are simply trying to keep Honey Pot Pond alive. And we are here now. I absolutely see what it's like at low tide, and it is not, as Mr. Warner suggested, thriving, what have you. I'm sorry, sir, but our reality is very different from what we're hearing here from the applicant's attorney, as well as some of what's been said. Perhaps it is healthy, again, not an engineer, but the pond was very deep at one time, and much deeper than it is now. And at low tide, it is concerning at how much silt, whatever it is, that's in there now that hasn't been over the past, in the past. Anyway, just wanted to reiterate that, those
Thank you.
points.
Thank you.
Appreciate your concern and your time in this effort.
Thank you. Anybody else? I guess somebody else? Okay. Take your time.
My name is Dolores Forrest, and I live at 5 Bayberry Cove Lane on the other side of the bridge. And I have noticed a tremendous difference in the water levels. I have 3 grown children now, but 1971, when we first took over that house, my kids were able to jump off that bridge, as Jane said, exactly the same thing. I see areas now that are showing dirt and everything that never was before. So I don't know what you're saying, that it's changed and that it's healthy. It is not. And I have a kayak. It's difficult to get through that area too from my place. That's all I have to say. And other thing, don't tell me that I see these tremendous, huge trucks, lawnmowers, UPS, post office, going by constantly on that bridge. Don't tell me that that doesn't have anything to do with being pounded and dirt and sediment going into that pond. It's not a healthy pond anymore. It's not what it was in 1971.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else?
James, what is the date of that photo you have?
1962.
62. Let them finish up.
No worry.
Charles Schwartz, 66 Far Pond Road. 2 things. First is just a reminder that the dredge that Ed was referring to was paid for by only certain individuals who live on that pond. The other individuals actually made it very difficult to actually get that dredge done. And by the way, we've never heard any stories of our guys climbing on that. There was a condition of the project that we wouldn't have, that they wouldn't do that, and I don't believe it actually occurred. I have photos, I'll give them to you, James, when I'm done, of holes in the bridge decking. Excuse me, in the whatever you call it.
Bulkheading?
The bulkheading, yeah. So I'll be happy to share them with you. I was down there just a couple of weeks ago at low tide taking pictures. I can show sand starting to fall out. You know, who knows what's going on behind it. So, thank you. James, should I email it to you, or?
Sure.
Yeah, so just give me your email address, and I'll send it over.
You can get a card from our office?
Yep.
Thank you.
Okay.
Anybody else from the public that would like to address the board with their comments to help the board make a decision on this application? None. We need closing statements from the sides here, or do you have enough information to work on this?
Yeah, I think we have enough information.
Mr. Reiner? Going to speak, Mr. Reiner? A summary?
The summary is going to be very quick. I just want to say I respect all of your time and your energy going into this. I appreciate what you're trying to do here. You've held this open for 4 hearings, which is something that is not, the trustees don't normally do, so I can tell you're taking a good hard look at this. And that is why I went the extra effort to put forward that PowerPoint presentation, which we tried to break down the history as best we could. We feel like there's a lot to unravel, and again, we're looking forward. This project is intended to mitigate any potential issues moving forward. My clients have been very open to accepting conditions that the trustees may want to apply to the permits, such as the hydrographic survey before and after, siltation curtains to, again, capture any potential materials that's coming out of the project as it's being constructed. Again, one quick clarification. We're not replacing the bridge. This has nothing to do with the bridge. This is the bulkheading on the west side of the bridge. It is not part of the bridge. It is the timber bulkheading, and that timber bulkheading, to my knowledge, was never replaced. The bulkheading that was being referred to that was replaced is the bulkheading on the east side, the stuff that we saw in the picture. Again, the PowerPoint presentation I put together gives you a good history of aerial imagery with photographs and some rough measurements. And again, I appreciate your time. I thank you for taking a good look at this, and I would respectfully ask you to close the hearing and schedule this for a decision. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Hill, you resting your case at this point in time here? Because we're going to move on.
I'm sorry, excuse me.
Reiner.
Counsel McCulley, Mr. McCulley just informed me, we do want to take a look at what was just submitted by Mr. Hill in terms of the coastal assessment that was put into the record. So we would like the opportunity to take a look at that. So if someone could send us over a copy of that, we would appreciate the opportunity to respond to that in writing if the trustees would allow us to do that.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
So why don't we keep it open until next meeting, and then they can do all
Mr.
their
McCulley,
research? and-
yes.
Because I do have one question.
Hang on,
about that.
Mr. McCulley and Mr. Hill, I think. Do you want to say something, Mr. McCulley?
No, I'm done.
You're done. Mr. Hill?
Extremely briefly, during today's hearing, we've heard, different versions of things that are objectively determinable facts. We're just asking you to look and see before making this decision. And if there's the opportunity to require either conditions on the grant or to hold this open until that code provision can properly be enforced, that's what should be done here. But it's, this is not, we're not in a gray area. There's people saying, this is black and this is white. We should go take a look and find out.
Thank you, Mr. Hill.
I'd like to keep it open until our next meeting. That way, everybody can look at the material that has been supplied, and at that point, we can make a decision.
So this is your application?
Yes.
This is your area? And your recommendation is to keep this public hearing open until the
12th of September?
12th of
Yep.
September?
And any written comments would be...
And that gives enough time for our office to provide Mr. McCulley and Mr. Reiner with what they need. I think that's a reasonable request, and I would second your motion to adjourn this till September 12th at 1 PM.
Yep.
Are we all in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay.
Aye.
So this public hearing's being held over, adjourned until September 12th, 2022, at the request of Trustee Moore.
Thank you.
Okay, moving right along. Thank you, folks. Number 2, notice of public hearing on amendment of rules and regulations for the management products of the town, considering amending management products of the waters, Article 9, Section 60, penalties and violation. Make a motion, open a public hearing.
Second.
Seconded, Trustee Pell, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Who's shepherding this one through here?
I think Joe wants to talk.
Yeah,
Joe, can you describe this for us?
sure.
Can you put your name on the record?
Yes, Joseph Lombardo, Special Counsel to the Trustees.
Can you please be quiet?
Okay, the purpose of this proposed Blue Book amendment is to formally put in a requirement that if we have to go to a civil court for enforcement of the Blue Book, there is a maximum penalty that we're allowed to get of $250, which is laughable, but that is what we are constrained by. But conceivably, you're talking about thousands and thousands of dollars of attorney's cost to secure that right to collect $250. Further, if we have to go to Supreme Court and we need to get an affirmative injunction, you're talking about a lawsuit, you're talking about appeals if by the loser. The fees can be enormous, as we know from experience with some of the litigation that we've had or that we are conducting currently. This is just merely a codification and a notice to the world that if we have to go to Supreme Court to enforce the Blue Book, due to circumstances which we have been seeing evolving in the last couple of months, that there will be a cost of doing business beyond the laughable $250. So that is the purpose of the proposed amendment, and if you have any questions, I'm happy.
So someone brings us to court over a violation, and and we win, they're liable for our costs.
Well, it would be if we prosecute the case to enforce it. Let's say somebody built something without a permit and they used treated lumber.
Okay.
It's not inconceivable that we're going to ask a court for an affirmative injunction for them to remove the offending structure and replace it with non-treated lumber. The question becomes, if we have to get that, it's going to be something which takes it's not going to be a quick procedure, as we've seen with some of our cases in Supreme
Goes on for
Court.
years.
You know, but the bills don't get cheaper by the age of the case, and this is just to help contain some of the costs for the trustees, especially in light of the fact that with getting the tax line, you know, you're going to hemorrhage money if you don't do something to try to collect the attorney fees, I think.
No hemorrhaging money, Joe.
No.
Well, this is a prophylactic.
So that way, the people who are watching can
Right.
understand what we're doing here.
I think this is a good procedure.
Yes. Do you want to vote on this? Close the wall?
Yeah.
Well, or is it prepared in the, is it in the?
There's a notice of adoption on it.
There's a notice of adoption.
Yeah, so just go through stay on the agenda, that way it keeps it. All right, so you motion to close this public hearing?
Close the public hearing.
It's seconded, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, number 3, notice of public hearing on the amendment of the rules and regulations of management and products of the town waters, considering amending the management and products of the town waters of the town of Southampton, Article 1, Section 1, definitions. Motion to open this public hearing?
Second.
Seconded, trustee Pell, all in favor?
Aye.
Speaking on behalf of the proposed amendment, Joseph Lombardo, Special Counsel. This proposal I lovingly refer to as the Duryea Amendment. There has been some ambiguity in the way the terms are being used in the Blue Book. And what this does is basically give us a definition of the uses that the word dock has been given in permit applications and even in the Blue Book at times. So this basically says that a dock can be floating, it can be fixed, it can be a catwalk, it can be whatever you want to call it, but it's going to still be a dock. And that's the only intent for this change to the Blue Book.
Any discussion among the board?
No,
I think
we all understand.
this will clarify it once and
Yeah.
for all.
Okay,
Well overdue.
somebody want to make a motion to close?
Motion to close.
Second.
Motion made by trustee Warner, seconded by trustee Pell, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so now what do we have? Notice of public hearing on amendment of rules and regulations for the management and products of the town waters, considering amending the management of the waters of the town of Southampton, Article 7, Section 47, permits required. I'll make a motion to open,
Second.
seconded by trustee Warner, all in favor?
Aye.
Again, speaking on this proposed amendment, Joseph Lombardo, Special Counsel. We had a discussion about some changes that could be made, some very good changes that could be made to this. And at this point, I would respectfully ask you to close the hearing. And additionally, there's a notice of adoption as part of the today's agenda. I would ask you to withdraw that resolution when it's brought forth.
Okay.
Is there a motion?
Make a motion to close it.
Motion by trustee Pell.
Second.
Seconded, trustee Warner, all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you, Joe.
Joe.
All right. Moving right along. Famous now, James. Famous. Public portion. Anybody would like to address the board at public portion?
We're waiting for you.
Now's the time. If not, 3 minutes. You have 3 minutes.
I heard the timer.
We do have some people online.
Okay, do they, see if anybody wants to raise their hand and,
You could speak to them first, I think.
well, you're here.
Okay.
You're here.
How are you all?
Good, yourself?
Living the dream,
I want
folks.
to know when the 3 minutes starts. Get to this, we can be quiet.
Okay. Tiffany Gavin, 53 Cliff Drive. A DEC order on consent has been issued to 65 Cliff Drive. 65 Cliff Drive accepted and acknowledged the 3 violations. Each violation is $10,000 per violation. This order on consent validates the action 65 Cliffs has taken and the negative impacts we have been communicating to you all since 2019. Order is to install a bulkhead, plant and dredge 50 cubic yards by November 15th, 2022, and to ensure that 85% of the plants survive up to 5 planting seasons. There is no clause mentioning the monitoring of the water for any period of time. We asked the trustees put on a clause of monitoring the water like the DEC is monitoring the plants. They're saying 85% survival needs to happen over 5 planting seasons. There is no mention of monitoring this water for navigation and tidal flow, for which we have been robbed by their actions. 50 cubic yards is not going to remediate the tidal flow. The remediation plan that 65 Cliff has presented to the DEC was evaluating from the current eroding condition. The property has been eroding since 2019 with water retention and storm impacts. Measuring from a lower evaluation would render less cubic yardage. Our first coastal plan presented in 2022 was from pre-bulkhead removal, 3 feet high at mean high water at about 160 cubic yards. We are stupefied by the low cubic yardage and strange how there is a finite number on a property that continues to erode. A separate application can and should be forced on 65 Cliff to dredge the land that remains in the canal. The DEC is not saying that's it, 50 cubic yards. They're saying that their order on consent is to 50 yards. We are begging, imploring the trustees to get in front of this problem that is being established right now. There should not be a number that somebody, a developer, has to pay. They're going to continue to do bad behavior if we are just saying, pay the fine. That's the cost of doing business in the town of Southampton. We need to bring back tidal flow. We need to bring back navigation. We have the opportunity to correct to an appropriate remediation. This was not an accident that has occurred. It was a plan. We need to get in front of this from happening again. I'm also asking you to revisit this when the 50 cubic yards that they're saying to be removed by November 15th does not bring us back to tidal flow and navigation. The fine hurts them. Their actions hurt the water, the environment, and us. Please, let's not communicate to them that this is what happens.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I see we have somebody else, I think, that wants to speak too. Okay, Charles, you want to let whoever wants to come in at public portion here?
3 minutes.
3 minutes, ma'am. Good afternoon. Can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Good afternoon. If you could state your name for the record, we're going to give you 3 minutes to address the board at public portion.
Sandy Schwartz, 59 Far Pond Road. There's an issue I'd like the board to address. The homeowner at the end of Far Pond Road has done what he needed to do by planting beach grass across his property to hide some of the rocks that were put in. What is happening is the beach grass is now migrating across the entrance to the public beach, and if we wait to do something about it in a year or so, we won't have any access to the entrance to that beach. So somebody has to monitor how that beach grass is migrating across the entrance, the public entrance.
You should put your picture there.
Okay, thank you.
That will be done?
I was down here the other day, there's a, west of the guardrail that's there, you can still drive on, and there was no beach grass. The beach grass is pretty much on top of the project that we
Mandated beach grass.
we permitted, and we asked them to put clean fill on top of it, and to put beach grass and water it to reestablish a good root system, so it would be less erosion in the area. So, we actually.
Now it is growing across, and if I'd love to meet you down there one day and we can discuss it because it's definitely migrating across the entrance.
All right, yeah, I mean, I would like to get your contact information. Is this Sandy Schwartz?
Touch.
Excuse me, I didn't hear.
I said, yes, we've been in touch a number
Yeah,
of times.
yes.
Is that a public beach or is that road end?
That's a road end and a public beach. It's a Trustee Shinnecock Beach Road. Yeah, you have my contact. Just send me a text. And are you around in the Hamptons now? Or are you upstate or?
I'll be going back to work. I'll be back on Friday.
Okay. Yeah, give me a communication and I'll reach back to you by Friday, okay?
Ready. The project has already taken half of the entrance. We'd hate to see lose all of the entrance. Thank you.
Yep, bye.
I'll have to talk about that. Okay, anybody else want to come into public portion? Anybody else, Charles?
No other hands.
No other hands? Okay. Let's move on from public portion into our, I guess, applications for determination or applications for approval or denial. Another hand? What did he say?
Another hand.
Yes, another hand.
Okay.
Stuck.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Hi, it's Andrew Tarika, 19 Far Pond Road. I'm not sure if I
put your
missed the
video on,
agenda
please?
item, because do you need my video?
Yes.
Hang on. Is that better?
Yes.
Okay, you have 3 minutes, sir.
I don't, no problem. Andrew Tarika, 19 Far Pond Road. I'm not sure if I missed the beginning of the meeting where you might have addressed it, so I apologize if I already missed this part. So I'm just wondering the status of the, as we discussed prior, moving the channel west on Far Pond. I know there's been communication with the Suffolk County Department of Public Works, and I was just wondering the status of that communication back from DPW regarding that issue.
The status, Mr. Tarika, is a tremendous amount of work that's going to be required to answer all the concerns and questions from the Suffolk County Department of Public Works. I suggest that you have a discussion with Mrs. Schwartz and the rest of your group and perhaps that expert that you had, because there's a tremendous amount of questions and requirements that have to be answered back to the Department of Public Works. And based on the level of information that they're looking for, this looks like it's going to be an involved process. So I think that there's a lot of work to be done here.
Got it. I understand that Jill communicated to you, and we were trying to determine what we can do as community members in terms of, you know, where the responsibility and where the workload's going to be to handle the communications and the response to that letter. Have we gotten to, you know, I know she reached out to James discussing what was going to be, you know, trustees' responsibility, where the DEC falls in, where all the other constituents fall in, so.
Well, my suggestion
maybe
was.
it would make sense.
Go ahead.
I was gonna say, maybe a suggestion would be, you know, I know we had that working group call, and maybe if we had another one of those calls, we could determine, you know, whose responsibility would be various parts of this workload, so we could, you know, move it along.
That's a huge workload, moving it along. I think that realistically, you know, put your seatbelt on. I'm glad to see you have it on because I think we're in for a bit of a long ride here. I also think that we need to include our county legislator in this working group because it's a county department that's requesting all this information. And I really think that your community and our board could be best served by perhaps seeing if we could get some assistance in the shepherding of all the information needed and asked for by this county department from our county legislator. I think you should have a conversation with Jill Schwartz and see when we can have another meeting of the working group. Okay?
It may be, if you turn off your video,
Yep.
if you turn off,
Can't hear me
oh,
anymore?
there you are.
No.
Okay. Now
No.
we can hear you.
Yeah, we can hear you, but that's what has to happen, Andrew.
Got it.
Okay?
Okay. The last thing I was just saying is, beyond the workload and who needs to do what to move this forward, has there been any pushback from any of the parties involved? Because from our understanding, everybody is supportive of these actions.
I couldn't answer that question definitively, so let's move this conversation to the working group.
You got it. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew.
Okay,
Go for it.
let's go. Applications or permits that we have to work on. I have trustee resolution 2022-218, Brothers Real Estate Ventures, LLC, 83 West Tiana Road, Suffolk County, tax map number 0900-257-03. I recommend its approval.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Trustee Resolution 2022-219, application of 203 Noyak LLC, address is 203 Noyak Road, Southampton, tax map 976-5-31.6, body of water, North Sea.
Second.
Seconded trustee Warner, all in favor?
Aye. Trustee Resolution 2022-103, we're going to table that until the September 12th meeting.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Trustee Resolution 2022-220, renewal application, the third one of permit number GP 000062 of Robert Latch, 13 Wells Lane, Hampton Bays. I recommend its approval.
Second.
Seconded trustee Pell, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Trustee Resolution 2022-221, application of 1076 Ocean Road LLC, 1076 Ocean Road, Bridgehampton, Suffolk County, tax map number 900-134-4-44, body of water, Sam's Creek. I'd like to recommend the
Second.
approval.
Seconded trustee Pell, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Trustee Resolution 2022-222, the renewal application, first time of Trumpets LLC, 58 South Bay Avenue, Eastport, New York, Suffolk County tax map number 900-365-1-20.1, body of water, Seatuck Cove.
Second.
Seconded trustee Pell, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Trustee Resolution 2022-223, renewal application, third time of the Hampton Court and Marina Condominium, permit number GP 000072, 580 Dune Road, West Hampton, New York, Suffolk County tax map number 900-392-1-8.2, body of water, Moriches Bay.
Second.
Seconded trustee Pell, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Trustee Resolution -224, notice to adopt amended Blue Book and regulation management of product of town water, the Blue Book. Consider amending the management and product of the water of the town of Southampton, Article 5, Section 60, penalty and violations.
Article 9.
Nine, sorry.
I'll second that.
Seconded trustee Warner, all in favor?
Aye.
Got trustee resolution 2022-225, notice of adoption on amendment of the rules and regulations for the management and products of the waters, considering amending the management and products of the waters of the town of Southampton. Article 1, Section 1, the definitions, trustees of the freeholders and commonality of the town of Southampton.
Second.
No, not done yet. The Board of Trustees for the town of Southampton desire to update the rules and regulations for management and products of the town, AKA Blue Book, to define the term dock as well as Article 7, Section 47, to require that design drawings submitted with permit applications. This is,
That's, I edited it to remove the second part.
okay, so let me,
You want to table it and do it?
let me table this, and then you're gonna have to fix that. So I'm gonna, based on the fact that we have some Scrivener's errors here that need to be corrected, and it's not gonna be detrimental for us to hold this, I'm gonna request that 2022-225 is tabled pending the cleaning up of the verbiage in this.
Second.
Seconded by trustee Pell, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I think 226 does it.
No, let's,
No, it's confusing.
it's confusing.
I mean, the next one. That's what I'm saying.
No, this one has to be tabled also.
Withdrawn.
This wants to be withdrawn.
Withdrawn, right.
Yeah.
So, trustee resolution 2022-226, I would like to withdraw this resolution.
I'll second
Second.
that.
Seconded trustee Warner, all in favor?
Aye.
226 has been withdrawn. Trustee Pell?
Trustee Resolution 2022-227, authorized to purchase a document scanner. The trustee required document scanners to preserve history and whereas Staple holds a Sourcewell contract for the office supply catalog and solution under contract number 012320-SCC, contract remains effective until April 6, 2024. Whereas the purchasing agency has received a quote from Staples for two Fuji FI-7480 document scanner of a cost of $5,999.99. Whereas document scanner available at Staples using source contract which would be verified as being valid by purchase and now therefore to be it. Resolved, the trustees authorized the purchase of two document scanners from Staples at cost not exceeded $5,999.99.
Second.
Seconded trustee Warner, all in favor?
Aye. Trustee Resolution 2022-228, Budget and Finance, authorized the purchase of two laptops. Whereas the Board of Trustees, resolution for 2022 requires authorized resolution for any expenditure of $1,000 to be it.
Second that.
Seconded trustee Warner, all in favor?
Aye.
Trustee Resolution 2022-229, this is to authorize contribution to Sag Harbor Water Quality Initiative. Whereas Southampton Town trustees are the owners of underwater lands in the Southampton Town portion of the village of Sag Harbor, whereas the health of these waters, including the products of the waters and other aquatic flora and fauna, is of the utmost importance to the trustees, residents, and baymen, whereas it is in the best interest of the residents of the town of Southampton to determine the presence of contaminants in the waters of Sag Harbor that could harm the health of both residents and marine life. Whereas Village of Sag Harbor has agreed to participate in the water quality monitoring program proposed by Dr. Christopher Gobler of Stony Brook University to the Sag Harbor Harbor Committee, whereas East Hampton Town trustees, Southampton Town Board, Southampton Town trustees have agreed to contribute funds for this water quality project, whereas Southampton Town trustees have pledged $2,000 towards this program, whereas for the sole purpose of adhering to the SUNY Research Foundation's funding requirements, the East Hampton Town trustees have agreed to pool these funds of the various entities that are contributing funds in escrow and pay Dr. Gobler with one check. Now therefore be it resolved that the Southampton Town trustees authorize payment in the amount of $2,000 to the East Hampton Town trustees. I'd like to recommend the approval.
Second.
Seconded trustee Warner, all in favor?
Aye. Trustee
Thank you.
Yep, it's a good project. Trustee Resolution 2022-230, authorized purchase of clam gauges. This is something we historically have done. It's a good program giving out free clam gauges with our free clamming licenses, so I recommend its approval.
Second.
Seconded. Trustee Pell, all in favor?
Aye. Trustee Resolution 2022-231, accept a Montauk Marl dirt donation for Diversified Services of Waterbell, Inc. I think this is something that we can use on some of our roadways. I think it's something that we could start out slowly in a couple projects to see how it looks and how it serves the public. So I recommend its
Second.
approval.
One question before we vote on it.
Okay.
Did somebody look at this material?
Not yet?
Yeah, just by pictures. We're gonna go
Okay,
down,
could you-
I
take
think
one,
it's-
we're gonna take 2 loads of samples.
It's bank run, and we're gonna, we're
Sure.
gonna make sure there's no surprises in it.
Yes,
Yes.
please just make sure there's no
Yes.
surprises
Yep.
in the material, please.
Where is it going to be stored?
The first 2 loads are gonna go to Peters Pond, and we're gonna inspect it. Then they're gonna go down and,
Grade it off.
yeah.
But
We're
then,
not quite sure if the maintenance crew gonna do it, or we might have to get, sub it out,
Contractor, or
Yeah.
get a bulldozer and have Ryan run it.
yeah. Might get a grader, because they can pitch it.
Okay, we have a motion, we have a second, all in favor?
All right.
Okay.
Trustee Resolution 2022-232, warrants, number 12 of 2022. The warrant is $18,990.85. Creative safety supply, $4,276.13. InterScience, $181.44. Joseph Lavada, $2,440. Loper Equipment, $178.93. Riverhead Building Supply, $311.74. Suffolk Stearns, $11,498.25. Town of Southampton, $104.36. Total of $18,990.85.
Second.
Seconded. Trustee Warner, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, I think that concludes the bulk of the agenda today. Is there any other discussion necessary for our board meeting today before we go into our executive session? Because we do have 2 topics, and I believe we have the town attorney scheduled to come back and speak to us in exec as well. Is there anything that's absolutely necessary right now?
Really quick, conscious point.
Shellfish hatchery?
Shellfish hatchery, I forgot the name, is gonna be donating roughly 15,000 bay scallops to be put in a couple of our creeks in the eelgrass in the next
Good.
couple weeks.
Okay. Anything else? Anybody else?
we opened, Ed. We opened Sag Pond last Tuesday. As of yesterday, it was still open, flowing well. It had drained significantly, and there is title exchange as well.
Good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else have anything more for the board for this general session here? Or are we good to close our meeting, adjourn our meeting, and go into executive session?
I'll second that.
Okay, so I made a motion. Trustee Pell has seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Let's close the meeting. We'll go into executive session.